things, you have kids at home, you're working, taking a full course load. And these study strategies that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to focus on retrieval practice, but as I mentioned to you yesterday in class, I would really encourage everyone to go to this website. It's called learningscientist.org. Are you seeing my PowerPoint?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, good. So I want to start by the general problem is that retrieval-based learning strategies are not widely used by students in college courses, despite all this evidence that reports students see a significant impact on their grades when they use these more effective study strategies. And I know those of you on the call today, you have high-stake exams. Those of you who are going on in your professional life, you have to take a certification exam. So if you use some of these strategies, and you can start using these strategies in classes so you get more comfortable with them, and I think you'll find down the road that you're happy you invested the time. Research indicates that the lack of using activities like retrieval-based studying hinders student success. Most students, you know, myself included, we tend to use these more passive, ineffective strategies like highlighting our textbook or rereading our class notes. And we underestimate the time of doing these strategies or using these strategies because these strategies, they require more effort, especially when you're learning a new subject. The other thing noted in the research is people who use these more effective study strategies, they tend to improve their long-term retention of the course material. So my hope through my research is to get more and more faculty to encourage this type of studying in their classrooms. So what we do in our medical terminology course, for example, is students keep doing these practice quizzes, and we make them do them enough times that they, you know, achieve a level of 85% or higher. Once students achieve that level, we find that when they get to the midterm and the final exam, if they've been scoring high on those retrieval practice quizzes, they tend to do better in the course overall. So when you go to this learningscientist.org website, they're going to talk about a bunch of strategies. One is elaboration, retrieval practice, spaced practice, dual coding, interleaving, and concrete examples. So we don't have time to go through all of that, so I'm going to focus on retrieval practice. So when you're thinking about retrieval practice, the thought is go through and learn what you're supposed to do. So if your instructor says, read this material, work on these activities, do that, but then put away your class materials and write or sketch everything you know. So be as thorough as possible, and then you go back and you check your class notes. So, you know, from a medical terminology standpoint, you're probably not going to be able to like remember all the terms you studied. So what you would do for medical terminology is take a bunch of practice quizzes. In our course, we have practice quizzes set up. Our lead instructor, her name is Jane Roberts, she input 844 questions to be exact. So there's this big test bank of questions for students to practice. So that's what they can do. If you're in another course, maybe you're taking a foreign language or you're in a math course, you might create your own quizzes over the particular subject matter that you were reviewing. And here, take as many practice tests as you can. If you don't have ready-made tests, then you might have to make up your own. Now, those of you who are in health information management, we have those study review guides. And if anyone else happens to be on the call and they're in another area, maybe you're in another health area or you're in engineering, if you have to prepare for an exam, chances are there are study guides for you to review. If you're planning to take the bar exam because you want to become an attorney, they have extensive products out there. And what students do to prepare for the bar exam is they take these practice quizzes and tests, and then they put themselves in a test environment. What we encourage our students to do is, if you could find a quiet place in your home or when the libraries open up, you could set a timer and see how many questions you get through. I think the students that I know on the call, you're probably familiar with making flashcards. Just make sure you practice recalling the information that you note on the flashcards. And then what I always tell students, you want to use your time effectively, and you all know this. So if you're flipping through the flashcards and a lot of them seem pretty easy, but you're struggling on, 10 or 12 of those terms, well, pull those ones aside, and then that's what you want to spend your time with the extra practice. Okay, and then when you're doing the retrieval practice, make sure you go back and check your class materials for accuracy. So those of you who are preparing for a certification exam that you'll take upon graduation at Columbus State, you'll want to look at what questions did you miss, or if you're taking notes, make sure you're getting accurate information. One thing you have to do is get past this point. It's like if you're going to train for a 5K, or if you just started taking piano lessons and you're new to reading music, it's going to be a struggle when you start. And that's why the research shows people don't do things like retrieval practice, because you know what? It's a lot of work up front to get started. It's so much easier for me to go through my textbook, take some notes, and then keep rereading those notes. But what I really need to do is sit down and start quizzing myself. So retrieval practice can be messy. You're having to pull information from your brain and you're thinking, I don't even remember learning that. So then you might have to go back to your textbook, read up about it. But the more you do that, the more comfortable you will be. There's people who, when they're starting to train for a marathon, they say, I couldn't even run down the street. But then they kept running down the street for a few weeks. Then they were able to run around the block. So they did that for a while, and they just slowly kept adding on. So if you do that with any kind of study practice, you'll eventually get more comfortable being uncomfortable. And like the slide says here, if you're struggling, identify things that you've missed from your class materials, and then you work your way up. So if there are certain concepts in a particular course that you don't understand, get with your instructor, kind of work it out, take notes. I'm in a class now. I get feedback from the instructor. I take notes. I go back to the drawing board, rework it. And as frustrating as it was, I can see myself progressing. And I'm getting uncomfortable doing the messy work, and I'm getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And I see it as a growth process. Okay, what it says here, don't always just recall words and definitions. Make sure you're understanding main ideas and how things are related. So, if you're in a medical terminology course or you're taking anatomy, a lot of that is straight memorization. So that is a lot of recall. But if you're taking a math or a physics course, or those of you in health information management, if you're taking coding, you need to learn how to apply concepts. So going into the code book, looking at a patient record, and then deciding, okay, what information do I need to pull from that patient record to be able to assign a code for reimbursement, if that makes sense. And the same thing, like if there's anyone on the call, if you're taking math or physics or chemistry, you're going to learn about concepts, but then you have to apply. So you might write down different theories. So example, I'm studying different research methodologies. So I need to know, what's the difference between case study research and a quasi-experimental research study. So what I might do is write the different types of research methods down, and then I'll go about and write what I recall or what I remember reading about that. So for example, in research, you might have a true experiment, or you could have a quasi-experiment. The main difference between a true experiment and a quasi-experiment is, in a true experiment, you can randomize the groups that you're studying. So you could have a random group who gets the COVID vaccine and a random group who does not get the COVID vaccine. So again, now I was just able to regurgitate some information about the difference. So now that's probably going to stick in my long-term memory because I made myself practice doing that. While the thought's in my head, what I want to tell you is, those of you who have children at home, I do recommend you go to this learningscientist.org, because they'll give you great descriptions. That's where these slides came from. And, if you have a middle schooler at home or someone in elementary school that's having trouble with their spelling tests or practicing math, you might get some strategies here that you could use to help them progress with their studies. And if you're really interested in the subject, you could read more about how retrieval practice is used, and they give you some links here. Again, the main thing is just go to that website that I showed you. And then this is to give credit for the people who are writing about this. So if you want more information, you could check with them. Like I said, they highlight 6 different retrieval strategies or effective study strategies that are listed here. The one thing that kind of goes hand in hand with the retrieval practice is this spaced practice. So that's thinking about planning early for exams. So those of you who have midterms coming up or thinking ahead to finals, or those in health information where you're going to be taking a certification exam to start working in the field, you want to start planning early. So students in my class, I have them put together a study plan for that certification exam they're going to take, because writing something down helps you get in that mindset to study. So even if I'm planning, I say, oh, I want to get healthy, I want to exercise more, I actually write things in the calendar. I'm doing some virtual workouts twice a week with a friend, and then I have certain days like I'll go to yoga classes. So for me, what motivates me is I put it on my calendar. I have a workout buddy, so that keeps me accountable. Why I have students create a study plan is to help them be accountable and to set realistic goals. If you're working full time and you're home with your kids, trying to help them do online school, well, maybe it's not feasible for you to spend 4 hours a day studying. So set something realistic. Years ago, when my kids were little, I used to put them to bed, then I could work on activities. Now I'm finding, I have these great goals to like late at night, work on projects, but then sometimes I'm just burned out from the day and not ready to do that. So what I find is I'm more productive during early points of the day. So when I have activities that require more thought and concentration, I schedule time in my calendar to do that in the morning rather than wait till later in the evening. So putting together a study plan helps you kind of figure out what's going to work. And you do want to put in breaks for health and wellness, so that you're not working 24/7. So what these learning scientists say about spaced practice, and it's really common sense, but start planning early for exams. Set aside a little bit of time every day. So the example they give is if you take 5 hours and you spread it out over 2 weeks, it's so much better and more effective, and you'll retain the information better than taking 5 hours that weekend before the test on Monday to get ready for the exam. So same amount of time, but if you spread it out over a series of a week or two, chances are you'll retain information better. And I would say add on that other study strategy of retrieval practice. So even if it's just going through practice quizzes, and then you find, okay, I'm good with this. These are the questions I didn't understand. Then on the subsequent days, practicing the material that you struggled with. So by the time it comes for that test on a Monday, you're not stressing out over the whole weekend trying to prepare for that big exam. Yeah, you can review your notes, but you could feel confident. I put the time in ahead of time, and now I'm just going to be reviewing my notes and making sure I get a good night's sleep before the exam. And then some other tips they give is review information from each class, but not immediately after class. So you might sit through a lecture, take notes, work on some activities, and you could put it aside. Maybe come back to it the next day and then see what you recall. And if there are things you don't remember, okay, now you know what you need to study and get prepared for. And I know some students that I've talked to in our program, what worked for them, they were trying to balance, a job, school, family responsibilities. Some students who were in a medical coding course, they'd say, okay, Tuesday and Thursday, that's the day. I set a few hours aside in the morning and I do my coding. And then on Wednesday and Friday, I work on my statistics. So you could put your studying into smaller chunks. It's less overwhelming and you'll be more effective. And then after you review information from your most recent class, go back and study important older information to keep it fresh. When you sit down to study, make sure you're using effective study strategies. So don't reread your class notes. It might seem difficult and you might forget information from day to day, but this is actually a good thing. It's showing that these strategies are working for you. It forces you to retrieve information from your memory. And if you don't remember, don't beat yourself up. You just go back, look for that information, and then write it down so that those course notes that you start taking in the beginning of a class, they'll kind of evolve as time goes on, because you'll get familiar with the concept and you might not need to review that anymore, but then maybe you'll be adding to the notes of things you do need to study. And then the last thing I want to say is create small spaces to do a little bit over time, and it's all going to add up. So that's really all I had to share. Do people have questions or comments?
Hey Lisa, it's Bridget.
Hi, Bridget.
Hi. I'm more worried when I'm doing my studying. Like, I'll do a little bit of everything. I'll highlight, I'll underline. I've been studying for another midterm and just going through, and she gave like a study guide. So I've been answering the questions on the study guide. But my biggest fear is, like, I'm doing the study guide, but should I be reviewing past quizzes, the answers I got wrong? But that information isn't necessarily, it's on the study guide. So I guess it's more of like, I should study both, but should I focus more on one rather than the other? Because this is what she gave me to study. So I think that's my biggest issue, is not knowing what to study, because I put all my effort into studying this when actually all this was on the test.
That's an excellent question, Bridget. What I would say is, if you feel comfortable with what's on that study guide and those concepts, it definitely wouldn't hurt to go back and look at previous quizzes and review, especially the questions where you struggled with coming up with the answers. And again, from a long-term standpoint, excuse me, those of you who are in the health information field, going back, you're not only getting ready for that upcoming midterm, but you're deepening your understanding of the content. So when it comes time to take that certification exam, you have a more solid foundation of what you know. Anyone on the call, do you have examples of strategies that work for you? Let's see who's on the call here. Oh, maybe these are all people from HIM. So what's been helping when you go through that review guide? Do you set aside a certain amount of time?
I was thinking of that because I did some of the courses, the sessions this week about thinking about time management, but then also they talked about doing a little bit at a time, and then, okay, just do this, take a break from it for about, study for 30 minutes, because that's very effective. Take a break, come back, study again. So I've been trying that, typing the information, so my printer is not working right now. So I'm having to type in the information. So I'm thinking that too, like just remembering, opening up my book, finding the response that I need, typing it in. I'm highlighting my book in a different color than what I did before, so I know that blue and my notes. And then I try to think about it when I was driving in the car today. I'm like, I can remember lyrics really well. Why can't I remember my study material as well as my lyrics? So if they could form this all into a song or, a musical number, I would learn a lot better that way, just putting those little cues. But then I'm putting all this effort into making a, forget what those are called, where you can refer to it as like a song or something. I mean, I could have just been studying, so I'm more afraid, like, I put more effort into one thing and it backfires and I don't remember anything or not enough. But if I could learn like I learned lyrics, then I'd be set.
That's another good point. Does anyone have information to offer on what works for you?
Hi, Lisa. It's Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
I think that the practice quizzes really help me if I can sit down and just look at the material through questions. I feel really engaged that way. If it's reading over notes or reading through a textbook, it goes right over my head. I will have to sit and reread multiple times to really get it down pat. But through questions, I feel just more engaged, and that I can even go back and look at why was it this answer and not the other answers.
That's an excellent comment. I think we all do the same, because if you're reading, I'll be reading and then I'm like, okay, then I start getting distracted and thinking about this other meeting I have coming up or a project, where if I'm doing something that's really engaging, like answering questions, you really have to focus on the task at hand. So again, it's harder, but in the long run, it's so much more effective. And then sometimes too, like if you're working in a group, even when I have to do some like group meetings for projects with people at work, well, you don't want to come unprepared and look, like you're unprepared. So it kind of puts me on more alert and it makes me more accountable, taking notes, and I become more active with my studying. And like this course I'm taking, the professor, she gives detailed feedback, and when you turn something into her, she's going to make sure, did you address everything that she noted? And if you didn't, she's not going to accept it. So that makes you or me, stay really engaged with the material. We have some more time, so let's talk about what are some different study strategies. Like, how do you, the hard thing is really making the time and sticking to that schedule. It's really easy to put a doctor's appointment in your schedule and you're not going to skip that, but it's a lot harder to, or it's easier, I should say, to say, all right, I'm going to study in the morning, and then you get up and something else takes precedent and you keep pushing that off. Just the same reason why people say, well, I'm going to get up and exercise every morning, but then something always gets in the way. Does anyone have any tips to offer on what helps them to be more accountable for their studies? All right, well, I'll share something. When I started working on this other degree, we had a professor, and he always required that we would start working on things at the beginning of the week. So if we had an assignment coming up, and we always had a paper due every Sunday. So it's the idea of that spaced practice where you're spending a little bit of time each day. And he said, by doing so, if something comes up, maybe your car gets a flat tire and now you're spending a couple hours in the shop waiting to get a new tire, you're not stressing out because you've been working on that assignment a little bit each week, and you have that buffer in your schedule. So you won't be set back if you miss a day of studying. How are people managing to juggle their schedules with work, kids, and school? Do you set specific days and times aside?
Hey, Lisa. So, yeah, it's I have a 3-year-old at home, and it's rough to try and get study done. And my sixth, I have 5 classes. My sixth class will start at the end of this month, and plus we have the PPE time for
Right.
your class, and it is a lot. So I try and stick with my schedule that I put out for myself for the week. It doesn't always happen. I think I'm doing pretty good so far.
I don't know how you're doing all that, especially with, well, even without the 3-year-old. That's a lot of coursework to have on your plate. So again, I feel like sticking to a schedule, and then for me, it always works if I'm accountable with other people. I know, I think we're all in the HIM field, so we could talk about this, but like if you're in Jane's quality class, it's having that accountability, even though sometimes it's not always fun working in groups. It kind of helps people rise to the occasion. So let's see if I could share. Oh, it's really loud in my house, so I can't turn the mic on now. Okay, let's look at the chat. That's the other thing too. Okay, so I can't turn the mic on now. One thing I try to do is go to the app Calm and listen to one of the sessions for mindfulness to try to clear my thoughts, because it's hard to settle down and focus, and it really helps to clear my mind. I am all about mindfulness, and I'm a worrier by nature. My mother was, and I am too. I have 3 grown kids. I think I worry about them more now as adults than I did when they were young kids, and I was juggling schedules. And what I found personally is that was going to be my other topic, is mindfulness. Is the more I actually take a break for myself, I use an app. It's called Insight Timer. So it's just like Calm. There's the free version, and I think I pay $4, and I get access to all these classes on mindfulness. So I start each day doing a meditation, and I try to end each day doing a meditation, and I've been doing daily yoga classes, and it's as much for my physical health as it is for my mental health. So when I'm starting, we're all juggling so much, so I always wake up feeling overwhelmed about everything I need to accomplish. And years ago, when I had the 3 kids home and I was carting them around to all different places, I never really gave that time to myself. And now it's probably hard with the 3-year-old, but when I do give myself that time, I find it helps me kind of come back to the present moment, because what are we always doing? We're worrying about what's to come in the future. I got this test coming up. Oh my gosh, I have to complete 90 hours of professional practice time. How am I going to complete that? And then you're thinking about that, and then you have kids tugging on you because they're hungry or they need help with homework. So what I've found, having a community of people to surround me just helps keep me grounded and realize, wait, Lisa, cut back, take a breath, slow down. I listened to a podcast recently, and those of you in health information, I think we tend to always want to be productive. So I can't just go on a walk. I'm listening to a podcast, trying to learn something. But I did hear a really great podcast, and it was some gentleman, and he was always stressed out about work, and especially Sunday night, knowing, oh, I have all these projects, but there's not enough time in the day. So what he does is look at, all right, I have 40 things on my to-do list. If I were able to accomplish 3 things today, what would make me feel a sense of relief? And he does that. And I've been doing that for several years now, and it really helps ground me. So I have a whole lot of things, and I'm like, well, what's the one thing I need to get done today? And one of my things is when we're done here, I want to go back and make sure I update everyone's professional practice scores in the grade book. And then we have program accreditation coming. So I'm trying to divvy up projects and get people to help so everything can come together. So that's kind of what I've been doing. Does anyone else have some suggestions on what helps take some stress away from them?
I think mine is just having that checklist. I try to do a little bit every day, and or I do one, I know, like at least one class a day, get all the work done. So if I don't do anything the rest of the day, at least I know I have that one class done. And just checking it off mentally, like I know I need this. I write down things a lot. I even started writing on my hand, old school notes, like to remind myself I need to go to the dentist today. And so I think if I can check off as much as possible, I feel productive. And at least I accomplished something. And I've always made my bed. I get up, I make my bed, and they said if you at least do that, you've accomplished something for the day. So even if I just go back to sit on it for the rest of the day and work on schoolwork, at least I know the bed's made. I don't have to worry about that. I got one class done. If I do nothing else the rest of the day, I'm good. I feel okay with that.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I've read the same thing, and I do the same thing. It's like I have to make the bed every day. And that's why I tell my kids, make your bed, because it just kind of sets everything in motion. What's always good for me too, maybe you guys as well, when I know we have a break coming up, and if we're taking a family vacation, I'm always so productive. And I've read about that too. People who, when they're going to take time off work, they get everything all organized because they know they're going to be gone a couple of weeks or a week. And they're like, wow, if I could have been that way before. Like, before we're going on vacation, that's when I go through the house, and like if you have to stop the mail, or I'm going through file folders, maybe you do this too. I just try to be more efficient with tasks. So when I'm taking the mail from the mailbox, I go straight to the recycling bin. So, you know, there's that time management thing that you don't want to keep touching your mail or touching your assignments, because you're just wasting time. Like, look at your whatever comes in the mail and say, do I need to handle it now? Then it goes in one pile for you to do it. Is it something I'm going to do next week? So you kind of, I think as a health information manager, that's our personality. We kind of sort and then try not to keep handling the same thing over and over and over again. But I think we're all in that same place. I think the really good thing is to, take some time to take a deep breath, slow down. What I found the older I get is sometimes it's better if I'm tired, go to bed, get up early and start fresh, and I am so much more productive. So that's what I've been doing too. So if you take care of yourself on the front end, make sure you're getting your sleep, just your whole outlook's better and you're more effective with your studying. Are there any other thoughts or comments? I appreciate you taking your time to be here today. And again, I really recommend you take a look at that website, just because there's some really good information, and all of you are planning to take a certification exam, and we want you to be successful in that exam the first time around. And I think you all have it in you. You've created a study plan. You're working on the review questions, so just keep doing what you're doing.